Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to talk about self-deception and optimism. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Kale Houser, your host for the next little bit. Hey, I am in the middle of reading this book called Fortitude by Dan Crenshaw. Now, I realized, some of you may not like Dan Crenshaw. Some of you may love him, like whatever the case may be. It kind of doesn't really matter. I'm not reading it so much for his political views. I'm reading it for his story. And just as a little bit of background, Dan Crenshaw is a current, as of this recording in 2022, a U.S. House of Representatives representative out of Texas. All right, he's a Republican, very conservative in nature. And he's most known for his eye patch, right? Because he was a former Navy SEAL and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, he wrote a book not too long ago that I'm in the process of reading. It's been on my list of books to read because I just find people that have gone through such adversity, whether it be physical, emotional, anything, and they've somehow come out of that as a success, as all things considered, as a successful life, successful person, that kind of stuff interests me because that's what we all kind of need to learn and how to do that, right? How to see those types of examples and learn from them. So when we face those types of adversity, maybe not so much, getting blown up by an IED or anything of that nature in our daily lives, but certainly adversity through all kinds of different situations, relationships, business, societal, whatever that is. So anyway, he's a former Navy SEAL, was blown up, during one of his tours by an IED. Basically, I think if I remember correctly from the book, somebody in front of him stepped on one, and then he got the full blast in his face. Basically, immediately lost one of his eyes, and the other one was essentially unrecoverable. Finds himself in the hospital, and the doctors are like, "Yeah, no way, you're going to be blind the rest of your life. It's just a matter of time before you lose that other eye." Like legitimately, the one eye was like gone. No chance on that one. But the other one, it came down to there was just so much shrapnel in it, and it was gonna, do all these things to his eye to make it to where he would never see again. And he makes this statement in the book in talking about his recovery. So he's sitting in the hospital, right? Because of course he was medevaced up to Landstuhl, which is the military hospital in Germany where all the wounded in actions and killed in actions were all evacuated to. And he's sitting up there, and he basically told himself, like, no, I'm going to see again, right? And it was based on no facts. It was based on no opinions of any of the doctors that had been telling him, like, oh, you've got, a 1% chance or anything. All the doctors were basically like, nope, like this isn't going to happen, right? You're going to be blind. And, he's going through, as you can imagine, this emotional thought process of, I'm never going to see the face of my fiance again. He had a fiance at the time, or I'm never going to see a sunrise or a sunset. And, all these things that, as you can imagine, would go through your mind if you were faced with this. But he makes this statement in the book, which I thought it just really jumped out at me in the page. And I have not completed the book. I'm in the middle of reading it, just in full disclosure. But he makes this statement, and I want to read it, that, shoot, I lost it in my notes here, that there's a small difference for, oh, wait, there it is. Okay, sometimes, sorry about that, sometimes, because I want to make sure I get this right, sometimes self-deception and optimism are indistinguishable. Okay, let me say that again. Sometimes self-deception and optimism are indistinguishable. And that got to me to thinking, because I'd never really thought that way about optimism before. Because, optimism, let's, kind of break down at least my understanding of optimism is, the hopefulness of a good outcome, right? The expectation of something positive is going to happen. I am optimistic of XYZ. I'm optimistic that she's going to say yes when I ask her out on a date. I'm optimistic that my child is going to get that scholarship, right? It's the hope of something positive and good. It's optimism, right? We kind of all understand that. But then how does self-deception play into that? And it really got me thinking, because it is so fascinating of a concept of really, that's kind of what optimism is. You are almost, in some cases, not always, but in some cases, you're deceiving yourself into believing that a positive outcome is possible, is plausible, is going to happen, right? And it was so fascinating because it's completely right. And certainly in his situation, he had no reason to be optimistic whatsoever. In fact, everyone around him, the doctors and everybody, the professionals that you trust in, for your advising because they have experience in this, had told him like, no, you're going to lose both eyes. You've already lost one. It's gonzo. And you're going to lose that second one and be completely blind. And he chose this optimism that was really at its core based on self-deception. He chose not to listen to any of the doctors and their beliefs, and he chose, he talks a little bit about this, that he felt this presence from God and things of that nature, and he chose purposely to deceive himself. And he even goes on further in the book to talk about like he never believed that he was going to be blind, like it never even crossed his mind, right? So it was this kind of interesting dynamic of he had this self-deception happening without purposely doing it, okay? So it was this interesting balance. But I wanted to lead into, now that we've kind of connected those a little bit, like what is the right time for optimism? And then what is the right time for deception, right? And is there ever a good time to lie to yourself, right? And certainly this is an it all depends type of situation of a lot of external factors. But I would argue to a degree, almost all optimism starts with a little bit of self-deception, a little bit of, hey, I know there's some things that are going against this belief. There are some things that say that this won't happen, whatever you're choosing to be optimistic about. But I'm choosing to believe, despite evidence otherwise, and be optimistic in this outcome that I desire and this outcome that I'm hoping for. And it got to me thinking like, okay, we're in a society that kind of espouses honesty, and it's taken as a critical part of our culture, right? And certainly in relationships and things like that, we all understand the effects of when honesty is not present. Is that a little slip right there? Not present in relationships and business and the negative effects of that. But when we're not honest with ourselves, can that be a good thing? And I would argue yes, right? I would argue there's a degree that when we lie to ourselves about something that for the right reasons, hashtag quote, underline for the right reasons and for the right motivations, then yes, that can be a good thing. But it does require a certain amount of maturity and actual purpose, right? You can't just go, as you're eating pizza and donuts and, all kinds of horrible things for your body and keep telling yourself, like, no, I'm a beautiful butterfly, right? As you're, just gaining more and more weight and getting more and more out of shape and just actually more unhealthy, cholesterol, blood pressure, all those types of things. You can't, that's a self-deception of a different kind that I'm talking about. That's on the completely, because that's not a optimistic self-deception. That's a self-deception of as bad things are happening that like, no, I'm actually not morbidly obese, right? Like I'm not going to die at an early age of heart disease or diabetes or whatever that is. And I'm not talking about that. So I would argue that yes, self-deception can be a good thing when you're trying to push yourself to be better, okay, if that makes sense. And that was certainly the case in Dan Crenshaw's case. All right, so is 100% honesty a valid practice? Would that have served Dan Crenshaw better if he would have been 100% honest with himself and say, well, I'd really like to, certainly I believe that I'd like to have one of my eyeballs. I accept that one of my eyeballs is gone, but the other one has a possibility, even though the doctors are saying there's literally virtually no chance that they're going to be able to go in with the surgery and find all the tiny little specks of metal that are poisoning the inside of his eye and, ruining his lens and retina and all that kind of thing. But he chose the self-deception optimistic route because, one, what choice do you have, right? There are certain personalities that will rise to the occasion. There are certain personalities that will succumb to the occasion. And certainly as being a SEAL and all the things that he had done in his life up to that point lent him more to that extraordinary end of believing in the possible instead of accepting the tangible that's right in front of you. But as this reminded me a lot, one of my mentors and who we work with closely a lot is Grant Cardone. And if you're not familiar with him, just look him up. He's all over the place. He's, the rags to riches kind of story, drug user as a younger man, completely lost, works his way through the ranks, develops this massive company, and is now one of the top sales trainers and real estate investors on the planet. And he has this quote that also really stuck out to me when he's talking about goals, because a big thing that he talks about is goals, hence why we're so focused on goals and trying to help our clients with that. Is he makes a statement, specifically he's talking about your goals, whether it be financial, personal, relational, recreational, physical, whatever that is. He says, lie to yourself about your goals until you find out you cheated yourself. And this is so fascinating to me as I was processing this, and when I first heard it, lie to yourself about your goals, essentially lie to yourself, how much you're going to be able to accomplish. So instead of saying, my goal is to, earn $50,000 a year this year, say, my goal is to earn $200,000 a year, right? You have no idea how, but that's your goal, right? Lie to yourself that you're going to be able to do it. And then he says, basically, until you find out that you cheated yourself. So lie to yourself that I'm going to make $200,000 a year, $500,000 a year, whatever that is for you, until you find out, like, holy smokes, here I am making $1 million a year or $1 million a month, right? Until you find out you lied to yourself, that your goals weren't big enough. And that's kind of the whole thing. And it is that little bit of self-deception of, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to make $1 million a month or a year or whatever that is, pick a number. And that's your financial. I don't know how I'm going to bench press 300 pounds, but I know it's possible. There are people that have done it, with work and things. I'm going to work through it. And that's my goal. It's something that's worthy to work towards for whatever reason that is to you for your goals in talking in this context. Until you find out, like, here, all of a sudden you are, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. I don't know a good bench press timeline, that you're benching 350 pounds, right? You lied to yourself in the beginning because you were capable of so much more. You just didn't know it because you didn't have that mindset and that example and all those types of things, right? It's just something that magical that happens when we start declaring and writing down our goals. The realm of possibility just expands, like it explodes, right? And this is a little bit, but you wouldn't start it. Somebody like me, I'm a small guy. There's no way I could bench 300 pounds. I wouldn't start it unless I lied to myself a little bit and understanding that certainly I cannot do that right now. But if I lie to myself enough that, every day I can do this. Even though I know right now I probably don't want to do it. There are times that you don't want to get up and go to the gym and all those types of things. You lie to yourself until you find out you're cheated yourself. But the point of that story is having goals so big that don't cheat yourself to start with, right? But at least do something to get going. But it's sometimes, we have to believe in something despite potentially everyone around us telling us otherwise, right? You have to believe that, yes, I can open this business despite your family going, no, just go get a job and be secure, right? Or I can become a Navy SEAL despite everyone going, that's like one of the most grueling things you could do as a human being, and all those types of things. And it's dangerous and all those types of stuff. And you've got those naysayers and doubters, but you have to be able to do it in a positive way as far as the self-deception part, to where that is a perfect marriage between the optimism, which is kind of like the end piece, right? And the self-deception is that beginning part of the track, right? The optimism is Maverick flying off the aircraft carrier into over the ocean in his FA-18, and the self-deception part is as I'm strapped to this catapult on the deck of the aircraft carrier that is not going to rip my wheel off, and this plane's not going to disintegrate, and I'm going to land into the ocean, right? So there's that little bit of self-deceiving belief in the beginning to where you can reach that the optimism part and the belief in the positive type of thing. All right. So make sure, though, there is one little caveat I want to add to this is the opposite side of self-deception. I've certainly ran into these types of people, and you probably have as well, if hopefully you're not one of them, is that self-deception when we believe we're better than we really are, okay? Like, I'm a phenomenal leader, right? And then you keep telling yourself this, that you're kind of trying to believe it, but then you go and you do these actions that are not at all near to being a phenomenal leader. So that's kind of that self-deception without the optimism, self-deception without the end goals to work for. You're just kind of deceiving yourself that you live in this world that you think is real, but the reality is it's not like that at all, right? So you're kind of deceiving yourself. Kind of similar going back to the, whether it be physical or that kind of thing. I think you get that point. All right, so it was fascinating. Like I said, I'm not done with the book. It's a pretty interesting read. I'd highly recommend you pick it up. I'll put a link to it, or at least the title and stuff in the description. Make sure you check it out. As always, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've read the book, if you had your own specific takeaways from it, that would be phenomenal. Let me know. Leave a comment. Certainly a like and subscribe would be fantastic. I hope you're getting a lot of good information from this. Keep an eye out for upcoming events, especially if you're in the South Florida area, West Palm Beach area. Liz and I are going to be putting on a attract, hire, and retain masterclass, where we teach small businesses and hiring managers, whether it be a hiring manager or you as the business owner, to kind of go through the hiring process and make sure you're attracting and retaining the right type of people for your workplace. That should be pretty legit. All right, go to kalehouserleadership.com/master. That's kalehouserleadership.com/master, and you can kind of get the information on that. It'll be pretty legit for upcoming dates for whenever you are listening to this. All right, hope you guys are doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback. As always, shoot me an email at kale@kalehouserleadership.com. It'd be phenomenal, and I'll talk to you soon. No matter where you are at in the world, have a fantastic day. Bye.